Happy first Friday. I missed you all last month. I wasn't here. Courtney, you weren't here either last month.
No, it was our first one without one of us. Good morning,
Yeah,
everybody.
I heard it went really well. Thank you for Penny
Yes,
and John for being our great
yes,
partners in all of
no
this.
kidding.
Really, really fantastic. As you all
Hey,
start
Janine.
popping in, yes, thank you, Janine. Thank you, Melinda. Drop a hello into the chat. If you're new, say newbie. I'm new, and where are you chiming in from? As we all are getting ourselves in the mix, we'll just set some context for those who are new to our webinar series. We've been doing this for a couple of years now. Um, the big idea was that we wanted to start just a first Friday of every month, a simple space for us all to connect with each other and get current and provide a current, relevant, emergent need, a tool that will help us as leaders really stay focused during the month, something that's outside of our day to day, and something ideally that's a bit simple. I say that, and I'm very present that today's topic is not simple, but we will get there. Um, and there's many, many ways for you all to participate today. Chat, take what you love, leave the rest, take time in between sessions to discuss and learn about the content, take actions, and just be looking for all the follow-up resources during between sessions. Excellent. I'm just looking at the chat real quick.
I know,
Hello.
Brandolyn, happy Patient Experience Week for healthcare colleagues. Awesome.
Wow,
I did not know
fascinating.
that. So thanks, Brandolyn.
That's great. Excellent. Good morning, everybody. Um, so you all are getting your hellos in. If you want to, and if you're willing, please describe one word. Take one, one word that describes just how your week has been so far, as we are here on this beautiful May Day today. One word. Courtney, I'm aware that I think you were going to kick this off. Am I doing this in the right order?
No, you're not, but we don't care.
See, I told you I'd forget.
That's who we are. That's who
Yeah,
we are.
great.
Oh,
Uh,
productive, Delmas. Nice. Swirly, Janine. I get you. Glorious, Abby. All right. Fun, sunny, insane. Yeah, Sam is holding a big event for us next week. And oh, Ethan, I'm sorry to hear that it's been heavy. Can I just steal and be like, yeah, ditto to
check,
everybody's
check, check.
words? I
Yeah.
like to plus one all of them.
One word for me is like diffused. Like I'm
Hmm hmm
diffused awareness. I know it's two words. What for you,
hmm
Courtney?
I've just stolen everyone else's words. I've
Oh,
cheated fully.
beautiful. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for doing what you need to do to get here every Friday. It's really amazing.
hmm
Um, Courtney, do you want to take this since I jumped
Oh,
in
sure,
fast
sure.
this morning?
So
Okay.
this is just a really quick reminder that we've been going through these sessions with kind of six themes that we're really seeing in 2026. And we're on number four, which is leaders grow faster in community. If you weren't able to attend the previous three sessions that we've done, they're the three previous months. We have recordings that are probably in your inbox, so you can go back and check those out.
Excellent. Great.
And the
Go ahead.
focus on this particular session is going to be about learning and community, as I just said. And today we're going to explore identifying the costs of going at it alone. We'll also talk about that we don't mean always you have to learn in community, but there's a push for more, perhaps. And I think we have community on the brain because we have a big live session next week that we're doing together, and it's about community for us. So this is a topic that really resonates with all of us. Yes, the mushrooms, Janine. We're glad that you noticed them. We'll
Mhm.
talk about Adrienne Marie Brown, and she brings them into her work a lot. And then exploring why we all think that learning is an individual experience as opposed to maybe challenging that notion a little bit. And then a structure for doing so, because it's one thing to say, yes, learn in community, and another thing to try and execute it.
Mhm. And like I said briefly, it's a big topic today, this
Yes.
one. And the content we're going to introduce to you, we're going to hit like the, 3-year-old version of understanding on this. And it's an invitation for you to step more fully into this body of work that we're going to talk about in a moment. So the first thing we want to remind everybody, and this is, I think, for myself, something I have to always keep reminding myself that our learning is not a binary experience. It's not this or that. It's not individual or collective. It's not one is better than the other. It's not always, but it's rather sometimes we are on this end around, I'm just going to go at it alone. And sometimes it's a full on everyone in the organization community. And then sometimes it's in between. And what we want is for all of us to be able to be more at choice about how we're showing up and how we're leading and how we're learning. And we want to keep reminding ourselves that it's always a flow. There's always a spectrum that we're working off. And do we have the capability to pause and consider which way of learning is most going to serve us collectively right now? Um, so I think what we can start with is just to get ourselves settled into this idea of collective learning. What do you imagine are some reasons why we might find ourselves developing on our own? As we look to our own historical ways that we learn and develop, as we look to how we engage in things, what are some reasons that we tend to maybe want to go at it alone? And we'll give a couple minutes here. Sam always reminds me that people need time to think and pause. And if you're willing to drop some ideas in the chat, that would be great. Courtney,
Ugh.
if people are nailed it, Ethan.
Ethan got it in my whole rant you missed at 8:15 this morning about that, Ethan. Oh, not wanting to be vulnerable, Sam, fear of judgment from others. The way they learn might be the not be the way I think. That's really interesting. Shame or embarrassment of needing to work on something, afraid to look stupid, vulnerable. Guys, I'm sorry. I know I always bring up the Enneagram, but I'm just seeing so many Enneagram things. I would say too, for me, sometimes it's efficiency. Like I read really fast. I process pretty fast,
Mm,
like too fast, because obviously I'm not in like actually incorporating everything I'm
yeah.
learning. And so sometimes it'll just be like more is better. So if I can learn more rather than like digesting all of it, that's one of mine. But also the
Mhm.
judgment and vulnerability, of course.
Yeah. I
Shannon?
think sometimes for myself, I have a belief that I don't think is all that useful at times, that I need to get it sorted out
Yeah.
and then I'll bring it to a conversation.
Mm, mm,
Part of it is my fear around my reactivity. I
yeah.
can be emotional, I can be hot, I can be impassioned, and sometimes that hasn't been all that welcomed. And so I think there's a historical
Mm,
narrative like get yourself calm and clear and then go learn in public or
yeah.
go learn with people.
Yeah.
Um, Instead of like it's okay to bring the mess or the chaos or
Mm,
whatever's with that.
mm.
So you guys, first of all, y'all are on fire today. The fact that
Yeah.
you pulled those off really,
Those are really good answers.
really beautiful. And I love that there was Ethan named the larger context we're living in, right? So as with everything, there's our own individual experience about why we might do that. And then there's the water we're all swimming in that is influencing how we show up. And it's really important to remember that it's not just I alone did not decide that maybe I'm messy in my process. I was very much, there's a lot going on out in the world that informed that. So keep that all in mind as we move through these conversations today. Really, really great work.
Yeah.
So, costs. So, there are costs when we continue with our individualism or we continue with learning in isolation or we continue with, I'm just going to develop me and not the larger org or community as a whole. So there's three people that have informed our thinking in this area. These are kind of our current and historical teachers. Adrienne Marie Brown, if you haven't looked at her work yet, I highly recommend that you go and explore. She's fascinating, and she's one of these people that when she read the book, I was like, this is the language I've been looking for. This is what I've
Hmm.
known instinctively, and she has put words to it. One of the things she mentions is that when we go at it alone, we sort of reproduce what already exists rather than this large, vast imagination of what's possible. So that's one cost is kind of no new thinking, no ideation, no innovation, no new thing, nothing. It's just like we just recreate from our own knowledge. Peter Block, he's one of my older teachers in the world. I feel like he's been around forever. A lot of his work was really provocative back in the day about community building and organizations. And what I love is that he named that when we only focus or overinvest on individual transformation, it comes at a great expense to the whole. And he puts a firm stake in the ground that individual transformation does not cause organization or community transformation. And I think that flies in the face of a lot of what we've been taught.
Yep.
And if we think about, navel gazing or just really
Mhm.
working on ourselves forever and not moving it out into the larger ethos, there's an impact. And back to this individualism. And Margaret Wheatley, who really took on her work through the lens of looking at nature. And
Mhm.
and her stance was really, nature knows how to organize, and human beings have made it really complicated and messy. But one of her insights is when we learn on our own, people struggle to own what they don't create. So if I go off and I come up with a big idea for my team and I put the plan together and I come back and say, here's what you're going to do, people are just going to struggle to find themselves there versus this experience of designing together. So there's many more costs. And if there's things that come to your mind as you are thinking of the cost, feel free to put them in the chat. Or even on a scale of 1 to 5, is this resonating with you? Like 5, yes, makes perfect sense. 1, I'm not quite getting it. Feel free to let us know because we'd like to hear how this is sticking with people. What we want to get present to is there are long-term ingrained habits in us that we develop on our own behind closed doors in private, and then we come out with the big answer. And we're
Mhm.
working today to say maybe not. Maybe
Mhm.
there's times when it's really important to do this all publicly and together and on behalf of a community and organization. Beautiful. Five, 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 fives. I love the
Mhm.
fives. And I love the ones too. We'll talk about voice
Yep.
of dissent in a moment. But yes, I
We're
love it all.
fans. We're fans of Dissent. Yeah.
Great. Um, so benefits, just more context for why this matters. So what we know is that people want to invest in what they've helped build, that when they have a stake in the ground. Collective learning does build resiliency and adaptability. We start trusting each other. We start respecting each other. We know that we're in it together. We know that if I have a down moment, my team will step in. This happened to me last month. I had a loss in the family, and my team was resilient, and we all adapted, and here we are. And that was one of the beauties of learning together. And this is really, really important that when we learn together, we also develop the capacity to act together. And I think in our culture is that we like to learn a lot. We like to inquire a lot. We like to reflect a lot. And if we're doing it on our own, we don't have that power of collective action. And we don't have the accountability of action together to move forward. So, business speaking, commitment, engagement, retention, better outcomes, all of that. Um, but we really want to anchor ourselves in what's the benefit to the community, the organization as a whole. Once again, any benefits, feel free to drop them in there. Courtney, do you want to take the next
Yeah,
tidbit?
so
Great.
so we're going to focus the rest of the session today on these 6 particular kinds of conversations for collective learning that Peter Block identifies in his book Community. And it's a structure for belonging and transforming individual work into collective outcomes. And so we're going to go through each of these, but invitation, possibility, ownership, dissent, commitment, and gifts. So in the chat, if you would type, and you can even type the number rather than the word, which one of those kind of sparked an interest in you of what kind of conversation you're like, oh, what's that one about?
Great.
644. Oh, gifts, gifts. Oh, lots of dissenters. I'm curious about dissenting.
You know me,
Rob,
a
about
good dissent.
possibility.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Invitation. 6. Okay.
Yes.
Great. 5, commitment. All right. Ownership is the only 3. People don't care. Just kidding. We'll talk. All right. So let's go into.
I do. It's interesting that ownership, mostly probably because that might be the one language that we hear a lot
Yes,
in our
that's
corporate
right.
settings. So
That's Philip.
great.
Yes, of course.
All right.
All
So,
right.
so as a reminder, this is going to
Yes.
be a bit like drinking from a fire hose
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Full, we own
We
that,
know it.
and
Yes.
we want you to have the goods.
Yeah.
So just consider this the teaser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you'll probably hear us come back to these. We just wanted to introduce all of them. So the first one is invitation, and it's who needs to be here. And so when people show up by choice and not obligation, you have community in a different way. And there is engagement in a different way. I think even just how you all came here. I don't think most of you are being forced to attend, other than Shannon and Sam and I. The rest of are not being forced to attend. And so that brings an energy and a desire and a possibility just even from that I'm choosing to be here. It also names, you name what it's at stake in the invitation. Please come if you'd like to. And here's what would be expected if you do come, which then tells people the purpose, why I would want to even attend.
Yeah.
It also considers who else could be in the room, which is really important because often we, again, if we do kind of follow our typical patterns, we'll just have the same voices in the room all the time, which goes back into that just recreating the same old, same old. And so if we
Mhm.
cast a wider net of invitation, we automatically have different voices in the room, which is different diversity of perspective. And so, yeah, Shannon?
Well, I was going to say, as you hear these, you can hear how much this pushes against, I'd say, the
Yes,
hierarchical
yes,
patterns and systems, the mandates, the demands, the you have tos, the mandatories, all of that.
yep,
And it's fascinating to consider if you were to set up meetings and say only come if this matters to you, what
yeah,
you would learn about
yeah,
your team, about your people, about the system as a whole. So it's a bold swing, and there's risk involved. And so, but it's also like, what a joy to be invited. What a joy to know what you're showing up for.
yeah. Yeah, Ethan, too true. I do choose it all the time. Yes, and yeah, I kind of want to do this with our next meeting invitation. Is just come if this matters to you. I think that
Mhm.
that element of choice is so powerful and insightful.
Yeah. And remember, not all meetings, not
No,
all the
no.
time, but there are meetings where it
Yes.
can be more of an invitation.
Yeah.
Great.
Yep.
So the second conversation that we want to consider whether or not this is present when we're working and learning and developing together in community is this idea of a conversation for possibility. So what this makes possible and why this matters is when you orient yourself around a conversation for possibility, your focus shifts to what do we want to create together, which is a very different orientation than what problem should we all solve together
Hmm.
today. And our brains like to solve a problem. We
Hmm.
also love to create and dream of possibility. So I'd say the habit is what's the problem we're here to fix. The new orientation is what do we want to create together. What happens is that this moves people away from the orientation to what's wrong, what's broken, what are we lacking, towards generosity, towards this is what we can build together, toward energy, towards a future that's calling us into action. Um, and because it's what are we building together, it's more ownable, it's more clear, and it lays a very, very strong foundation for really commitment and action taking. So for myself, it is more fun to get moving on a possible future than it is to get moving on a problem that we all are burdened by.
Hmm.
So, in some ways, every problem does have a possible future. So, that could be a really great thing for you to consider is if there's a problem that's persisting, what is actually the possible future that you're wanting to create where that is in the way and get yourself oriented to that. So, an example is, instead of starting meetings with metrics and did you do your tasks, re-presence, what would our work look like if it was everything we hoped it to be right now? So over here at Henley, we're in the midst of like just cleaning up systems and cleaning up processes. And we have these, we have two new people that joined our team that are just beautiful at doing this. And it's not just about the task, it's about what that's making possible. What it's making possible is greater service to our clients. It's making possible that we get to work with greater ease. It's making possible that we're going to free up space for ourselves. And that is exciting to get working on versus go clean up all this mess. So that's part of the possibility conversation. Great. And so we have a poll. So as you hear these first two, um, and Sam, can you launch them? Beautiful. When you think about the current community or team you're in, which feels most true right to you right now? And you can, I had a request, I think a couple sessions ago, like can we select multiples? And so yes, you can now pick more than one. But what feels true for you right now? Um, do you spend most of your time talking about what's wrong? Do you have moments where you're present to possibility, but then you go back to the problems? Do you actually create space to envision and build together? Or are you like, you know what, I don't think we really operate in this way at all right now?
I think that shift from being focused on the problem and identifying the problem to what's possible is particularly challenging when we work with some of our tech friends when their whole job is to seek out problems. And so even that language, is there another way that they could even phrase the language in
Mhm.
working together? Because if that's what your whole orientation is supposed to be day to day, how do you
Yeah,
even shift, on what to what end and on what behalf and what possibility are you creating as you're looking to solve these problems? So I'm always struck by that whenever we work with tech folks who are like, wait, that's my whole job.
yeah. My job is to fix problems.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think it's a simple question of if I fix this, what does it make possible?
yeah,
And then all of a sudden you're popped into a larger idea,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like that.
yeah. Okay, I'll end it.
Okay.
Oops.
And- oh, are you sharing? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
sorry.
great.
There you
No,
go.
you're good.
Okay,
Excellent.
so looks like we spend most of so it looks like we occasionally imagine and then return to quickly to problems, which I think is very common. That's what I would say that's very true. And then quite a few regularly create space. That's incredible. Spend most of our time talking about what's wrong. We don't have anybody who says we don't really talk as a community at all.
Great. Good.
Baby steps.
Baby step, good.
Yeah, yeah,
That's great.
yeah, for real.
Beautiful. Excellent.
Thanks.
Okay, so that's your first two. Is there conversations for invitation happening? And are there conversations for possibility? And once again, these are the conditions or a structure for how you start fostering learning as a community or learning together in your organization. So those are the first two sort of things to consider.
Yeah. So conversation number three is ownership. And I think this one is interesting that it was kind of the least identified. And I think it's something we talk a lot about. And I hear a lot just in my design conversations with people how often they want to talk about the word accountability. And what I hear often is kind of the stick version of accountability, but this is the carrot. This is the creation part of ownership, of accountability, which is now it's shifting the focus from over there, a little bit of a persecutor, if you remember our triangle, to us. What do we need to own? What do we need to be a part of? And again, if I've been invited and I have chosen to show up, I am envisioning the possibility. Then when we're, like Shannon said, cleaning out our systems, and people go, Courtney, why is this a mess? And I go, oh, it is. I did that. I am willing to name it and claim it, even though, as you identified this morning in your why it's hard to learn in public, that can be embarrassing and vulnerable. But it's in service of what's possible. What's possible is it's cleaner and more efficient and better for our team and better for our clients. And so I'm able to name, yep, I did that. That's part of
Mhm.
my ownership in it. And so which allows me to invest in the outcomes we are making together.
Yeah. And I want to
Which
double down on what you said about accountability, that that word gets tossed
yes,
around. And
yeah,
what might happen if we shift the orientation
yeah,
to who wants
yep,
to own this and really be invested in it and who wants to really lead it and who and part of how this is possible is because they've been invited and they've helped
that's right.
define the
Right.
possibility around it. So these all stack together very beautifully.
Yep. Yeah, and I think too this distributing leadership and that right. So what is not a gift of mine when we get to gifts is the kind of like ordered step by step doing this. I am not super linear in a lot of ways, but if I have people who are gifted in that way, how can I follow their lead in service of what we're trying to create? So, and then how do I say, and what am I willing to do differently to this possibility of creating this new way of working or new way of thinking.
Mhm.
So that again, I am owning my contribution to this.
Yep.
Yep,
Beautiful. Beautiful. And this is an important thing. I think the sample, the example that we have on the slide is, how often do we just ask, what is the one thing you're willing to do to move this forward? So we all have, whether it's an internal shift or an external shift, is to really ground it in that, to name it in the room amongst each other is really, really important.
well, and I think the word willing is really important because I think often we'll be like, yeah, I will do this. Will you? Like, is there will? Are you actually willing to do it? Is a more active choice, I think, than yeah, sure, I'll do that, which we say a lot.
That's great. So this is the gold. I love this one. So the voice of dissent. So, this is about as we continue to look at how do we learn and develop together. So you've been invited. There is some sort of, co-creation about a possible future. There is, ownership and willingness and what's my part to play. And then we need to and we want to make room for the voice of dissent in the room. And why we want to make room for the voice of dissent, because if you don't make room for it, it will show up
Mhm.
many other ways in many other places. It'll show up as resistance, it'll show up as gossip, it'll show up as apathy, it'll show up as, I'm going to not work the issue, I'm going to work around the issue. And so what we want is in our spaces, in our meetings, in our groups, in our project planning sessions, we want to be able to surface those. And we want to create the permission to say, this is what I don't get about this, or this is what I'm questioning, or this is where I have concerns, or this is where I notice I can't quite buy into this, so that you as a group can begin to name those and address them one by one.
Mhm.
So, the sample is of the bold question. As the facilitator of this meeting, or as your manager, or as the leader of this organization, I want to hear, and you need to mean it if you're going to ask this,
Mhm.
what doubts do you have about X that have not been said out loud yet? And it may be something you have to ask multiple times
Yeah.
during multiple meetings,
Yeah.
because more will surface.
Yeah.
And what I really love about this idea is that if you're able to bring this into your space, then people's yes and people's commitments are true.
Yep.
I love the idea that if you don't do this, consensus is just performance. If you
Yep.
don't give room for voice of dissent, consensus, I would be questioning the consensus. I'd be questioning, like, yes, I'll do that. If you haven't heard yet all of the concerns. You want to say something, Courtney?
Yeah, I do. I was going to say that I think one of the challenges of asking these kinds of questions of what doubts do you have is I think in this like fast paced, we need to keep moving that the voices of dissent, particularly if they are downers for us, can be viewed as naysayers and or they're just not along with the team. And I thought we
Mhm.
were all in on this together. And there can be kind of a you're downing our positive vibes and where we're headed. And we'll get to gifts, but this the person in the room who says, have we thought about, is a gift to those of us who move very quickly. And so, what dissent are we? Yes. And then if there is silence, right, that's also a scary one. But that could be dissent as well. And so, how do we pause and make room genuinely for the voice of dissent when we write a story, maybe that they're maybe it's a sign of commitment and not a
Yep.
sign of naysaying, which is we write the story that they're naysaying.
Mhm.
So maybe I'm speaking from my own, but I think that's common.
Yep. Great. So real quick, scale of 1 to 5. Resonating. How are y'all feeling? Because I said it's a lot.
Yeah.
1 being, ugh, you've lost me. 5, like still
Yeah.
in, still tracking, still
Still
resonating.
tracking you.
Okay.
Oh, wow. You guys are the smartest group, smartest
I,
webinar attendees.
in the Northwest, the sun has come out. I think our brains are like
It's
alive
true.
again.
We're all just like,
Yeah. um, and so the other thing, we're on, this is like 4 out of 6. We have 2 more we're going to go
yeah,
through. But you can also begin to see how much internal, like, we have to get ourselves sorted out as leaders to hold these
yeah,
conversations. I know many a leader who says, what doubts do you have?
yeah.
But they don't really want to hear it. But they
That's
know
not
it's the right thing to say. And so we have to get ourselves to the point where we actually really want to hear it. We really welcome it. And so just be noticing that we don't want this to be performative. We don't want to just say the right thing. We really want to create the atmosphere where it's welcome and we get to work through it. Beautiful.
even that is the best.
Oh,
What doubts do people have about this presentation? Go ahead, give them to us.
oh, let it rip, y'all. I have doubts. I have a doubt that I'm going too fast. It's
Oh
too
yeah.
much.
We had Dissent this morning in our pre-session call, so that's
Yeah,
great.
that's great. Super
Okay.
fun. All
Well,
right.
nobody
Oh,
wants to
poll.
take us on. Great.
Excellent. Sam, you want to launch the next poll? What happens when someone disagrees, or what happens in your current org or community when there is the voice of dissent, or when there is a disagreement? Great. Is it welcome? Do people stay quiet? Do they have the meeting after the meeting? I always love the meeting after the meeting.
Yeah,
Um,
I feel
and
like that
yes,
one is
depending on who's in
real.
the room. Beautiful. I think in our team, I think. I think we're pretty good at saying, I'm going to be the voice. I'm going to be the voice. I'm going to speak the thing out loud right now. We kind of name it when we're having our team meetings. I think sometimes there's often like a little quiet, like a, like and what, that's another thing I love about the voice of dissent. It slows down
Mm,
the automatic way we're working.
mm, hmm
Because when a voice of dissent enters the conversation, I notice I have to pause because
mm,
I usually don't know how to automatically respond to it. It's
hmm
something I haven't thought about before. It reorients me not to just all the fun and the possibility, but a bit of a grounded assessment. Um, and so I noticed that for myself, that's kind of when the voice enters. There's a
Yeah.
pause.
Well, Carol, our CEO, gave me some feedback that when she knows I'm disagreeing with her when I go quiet, because as you might all may have seen, I don't really do that. And I was like, that's really interesting feedback. And so I think what I'm doing is I'm gathering what I'm going to say to Shannon's point. So I just don't say no, which
Mhm.
isn't useful. And I'm trying to wrap, but she notices that I get really quiet really quickly when
Yeah.
that's how she knows I'm disagreeing. So I do think to pay attention to silence. And of course, everyone dissents in a little bit of a different way,
Mhm.
which is
Yep.
an interesting thing to observe as well. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stop sharing. So what do
Yep.
we see?
So it looks like, so I'm going to talk a bit about the half. So there's
Yeah.
about 50% of us that says it depends on who's in the room.
Yeah.
I'd be curious for those of you who are brave in the chat, why? What is happening depending on the person in the room? Like, what
hmm
is having us show up differently? Is it position of power? Is it hierarchy? Is it lack of trust? Is it I don't push back on authority? You can kind of look for yourself. Why does that matter? What has me show up differently
Yep.
depending who's in the room? What has my team show up differently depending on who's on the room? So I'd be thinking about this. And overall, pretty evenly dispersed
Yep.
responses to this one. Um, and I don't want to downplay who's in the room.
hmm
I feel more open or not, depending on who's in the room. And if we look at this idea of learning together in community, how do you as a group begin to look at that together, even? Like I
hmm
notice that we show up differently. I notice that we
hmm
listen to voices of dissent differently when it's this group or this group. How do we
hmm
do that? Great.
hmm Some great responses in the chat. The hierarchy, of course, is always going to be something that the extent of pre-existing relationships, I think also, right? What's our depth of comfortability with one another?
Mhm.
The larger the group, the riskier it feels. Yeah, because you can't control how it lands on every single person. Courtesy is really interesting.
Mhm.
Managing input levels if feelings can be hurt. And that is interesting. And how do we create a culture where we can name a thing, even when it feels challenging. Yeah, the not open to feedback and who's less open versus more
Mhm.
open.
Yeah.
That's true.
So all of this, I think, are good signals if we
Yeah.
we think about moving this out of just what do I need to learn about this to as a group, how can we talk about, oh, I noticed this.
Yeah.
I noticed that there is a political reality we're navigating. How do we
Mm-hmm.
move through that together? What do
hmm
we want to say about that? How do we as a group? I think this is really, really great insights.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, commitment. So this is where the real transformation can really starts to show up. It's a promise for the sake of a larger purpose. It's not just for personal return. We are on for something bigger than myself, and so we're going to commit to that. The leadership task is to reject the kind of lip service and demand either authentic commitment or, and this is the trickiest part, say no and pass. Like there
Mhm.
has to be an escape route where people say, no, I can't be part of this. And that is kind of counter to a lot of the ways that our teams and groups have to work together. So I think that's interesting. So the intention is really moving to action. Who's going to do it? By when? And how are we going to move this forward? So it does need to be specific and concrete. This is where we really get out of the like possibility and wonderment and
Mhm.
into the trenches of the work. And then we know that peer accountability is far more durable. And we know also there's a lot of research about if we say what we're going to commit to out loud
Yeah.
to those peers, we are way less likely to fail to do what we've committed to.
Mhm.
And this is the other thing about this. And this, Ethan, I think from your very beginning of this day here, we talked about um, the individualism. But I think what happens is when we do some of this navel gazing and I want to learn and improve and develop and grow in my own, I'm not changing culture, strategy work, organization, the world.
Our
And
communities, the
so
world.
the world,
Yeah.
seriously. And so how do we start to say, this is the action that we're going to do? We're not just learning, we're taking action, we're doing it, and we're doing it together. And that is how systems actually change. And so, from a lens of just my team can change, and then what can ripple out from that. So at the end of a workshop, how might we say what's one specific thing we're going to do before the next meeting? And then I have to say it aloud to this group.
I
Um,
was reflecting on, we lead trainings all the time.
yes.
At this moment
Yeah.
in our sessions, so you imagine the whole session, everyone's in and they're loving it
Yeah.
and they're
Yes.
vibing and they're
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm in, I love it, love it, love it. And then we say, great, what are you going to do with all of this?
Yeah.
And the room can get squirrely because
Yeah.
all of a sudden now we've moved from theoretical, interesting, reflective, like, oh, I'm just learning a lot about myself into now what's the thing that's really going to have this thing exist
Totally.
out of this room. So you'll feel it like, because now it's like, oh, I'm putting my stake in the ground.
Yeah.
I'm saying
Yeah.
I'm actually going to do something. And this is such an important moment. I think we can spend a lot of time not putting our stake in the ground about what we're
Right.
going to do with all that learning. And so it's a bold swing here, and it's a big one. And you need all those other steps before to really get to this moment. Great. Okay, and the last one is gifts. And I know there was a handful of you that, were kind of curious about this one. And so the idea is really getting clear about what each member of your group, your team, your org is bringing. That is really their unique contribution to everything. Um, and our once again, back to this idea that we often orient to problems, we also will often orient to what are we missing? What are we lacking? What do I not have enough of? What do they not have enough of? Instead of saying, what do we actually have an abundance of on this team that maybe we're not fully honoring? Um, so why this matters is we get to begin to see the vast abundance of capabilities and capacity in humans we have in our organizations. We get to uniquely see what each of them can bring to this conversation. The second one, which, Courtney and I were like, oh, this is big, is it restores dignity.
Mm.
When you're able to, I actually just got a little moved by this right
Yeah.
now. When you're able to look at that person as
Yeah.
the gifts they are bringing to you and your organization and the project and the team, that person's dignity is restored.
Yep.
They now know they matter. They now know they are a contribution. They now know who they are as making a large impact in that system. And we will say over and over again, so many people leave their job, their boss, because of lack of recognition and appreciation, really for who they are and what they're uniquely bringing. Um, and it's focusing on that strength of what you already have in place versus what's lacking. So one of the great questions that we love is like, what do you bring that we would never find on your resume? What's that sort of that it's the hidden gold. And if we think about feedback even, or what's kind of, they use the word like our perception gaps or our blind spots. Sometimes our gold and our contribution is in there too, that we haven't named. This is my unique contribution that I haven't brought fully forward. Here's the gift that I maybe have been withholding, and now I want to bring it forth. So there's big work in this one, and it's a big, big motivator. Um, should
I
650
love
work
this
out?
question, Ethan.
I don't know. I don't know. Um, that's a great question. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it is.
Yeah.
I know. I think it could even be like two, but because I think if we had
Yeah.
navigated life treating each other this way and sharing our gifts this way and leaning into them and
Go
elevating
first.
them, right? Like what would
Yeah.
change with that? I also think what my understanding is having it at six is because we've made the commitment. Now, where do we need to go? And then it's how do we lean into each other's gifts as well? Like how might we share them in this purpose that we've committed to? And I think it's very possible to bring in this question earlier
Yeah.
and more frequent. I think sometimes this is like, okay, here's your job. What are you good at?
Mhm.
But also there's a lot of secret gifts out in the world that people aren't feeling like they can or should or might bring them into their work. But
And
great
I
question.
I think what it brings up for me is like my mind's always wanting to think something's a linear
Yes.
process. Like,
Yeah.
and yes, these build and there is, but it also can be like, what are we missing? Like,
Yeah.
which one are we not tending
Yeah.
to right now? And so that was great. I love it when questions
Yeah.
bring up the next question. So
Yeah.
great. Yeah,
That's great.
excellent. So on that, what conversation do you think is missing most right now? So if we, you know, out of all these six that we've introduced, when you reflect on your own team or your organization or community you're existing in right now, what do you see as missing for yourselves? I always like to hear what my personal team has to say in these moments.
I know.
Yeah,
Mm.
tell on us. Yeah. Um, do you have any thoughts on that, Courtney?
Mm.
Or are we just so
I
bad?
well, yeah, we're so advanced. I think I think sometimes dissent, not in that we are not willing to say whatever we need to say to each other,
Mhm.
but I think we get so excited about possibility
Yeah.
that we can forget to slow down to make space for dissent, even in
Uh,
our own minds. Like maybe
yeah.
I have dissent I didn't even think about yet
Yeah.
because I'm like, let's move, baby.
Mhm.
And
Well, even
so,
if at our own team meetings, we said, okay, what concerns,
yes,
reservations, like
yeah,
we just asked the question out loud and let us all take a pause
right. Because we
together.
do
Right.
have people on our team
Yeah.
who probably have more dissent than you and I do.
Yep.
And so, are we making space for them?
Yep.
It would be my, yeah. Oh, and Sam says sometimes we don't fully tap into our gifts because our team is small and been spread thin. So yeah, there's gifts that are untapped because yeah, that's I think of that too,
Because we
Sam.
have our hands in so
Right,
much.
right.
Beautiful. Okay, I'm going to end the poll,
Okay.
share the results.
Ooh, ownership. Mm-hmm.
So here's what's interesting is
Mm-hmm.
ownership was not the one people were
That in,
curious about at
yeah,
the beginning of the
yeah,
webinar. And it's one of the top ones that you're now seeing
yeah,
might be missing.
yeah.
So really like your brain didn't even know to be curious about it as a missing. And now you're like, oh, I think that one might be something to focus on. And it doesn't surprise me about gifts. We do a whole body of work called Power of Appreciation. And we get so much resistance about acknowledging gifts in the workplace, acknowledging people's
Yeah,
contribution and how great they
yeah,
are. And it's sort of like, why should we acknowledge people just for doing their jobs?
yeah.
This is more about who is that person unique in your system. So really, really great work.
I know when
Okay.
people don't even, it's not even the rebelling against appreciating, it's receiving the appreciation that is often really hard for people, which
Yeah.
I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Kathy, I love this. Who can share an opposite point of view? I think is great. There's also a really fun, it's a learning. Oh my God, I can't remember the type, but it's Triz. And you say, how could we break this? If we wanted this
Ooh,
to fail, what would we do? And I think that can be a fun, like mind bending experiment.
yeah. Great. So where to begin with all of this? Like I said, it's a lot. So we're going to send, as always, we're going to send a follow-up resource, an overview of this thinking. I really recommend you look up those three authors, really that talk about convening and gathering and coming together. Priya Parker is just great too, as far as what it is to gather and get together. So kind of as a start, once we send the resource sheet to you, grab a few people and just have the conversation about the six things. And that's sort of an entryway into what it is to learn and develop together. Adrienne Marie Brown, small is all. So we don't need to, we're not going to go implement a whole 6-step process in our organizations. No, we're going to be like, okay, what's one little baby thing we can maybe play with or experiment with about this? And then Margaret Wheatley has a great distinction called follow the yes, which
Hmm.
is she asserts that sometimes we just work too hard. There are groups of people that are willing and want it and are ready to rock. Go find those people and convene a learning community and begin to kind of look at these things together. Get yourself anchored around something you want to learn together. Um, and then a really fun thing that Sam has created these last couple months, which is just a really remarkable community, online community, is she's designed what's called the Henley Hub. It's a free online leadership community. Um, We have about 350-ish people that are part of this webinar community. You all will be getting invitations soon to pop into that world as a way of beginning to lean into each other more as a resource. So just know it's coming. We're working out a few kinks right now, but you'll get your own space in there as our first Friday webinar attendees. And last but not least, just remember all this is choice. This isn't end all be all on how to learn together. This is one particular structure that might work on how to move from individual to collective and community-based learning. And it's remember that sometimes we learn in community, sometimes we need to go off on our own. And it's about choice and about being aware of where we are in the moment. Beautiful. Anything else, Courtney? Beautiful.
For being here
We
as
are over
always.
time today. We went
Yeah.
long. If you have time and you haven't popped off already, a word or two about what you're present to right now as you consider what it means to learn in community. And thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it. This is one way we do it right here, this webinar.
Yeah, we love this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, and some of you we're going to see next Thursday at Henley Live, and we're
Yeah.
excited. So, Kathy, that'll be so fun.
Yeah.
Dissent can be fun. Sam.
Here we go. Excellent. Scheduling it, thoughtful. Yeah, and I think there
Yeah,
are a handful of you that we're going to see next week. The fun news is we sold out. We
yeah.
it's going to be it's a full room. We're really excited about that. And I'm excited to meet some of you in person. It'll be great. All
Start a
right.
new month. I love that. It's like work therapy. There you go, Kathy.
All right. Have a great May. We'll see
Yeah.
you in June or